Welcome to Venator Chronicles Podcast.
I'm Dustin Jelly.
And I'm Ethan Taylor.
Join us on our journey of lessons learned through the world of hunting.
All right, we're back from being back.
Back.
So
Second time around back.
Yeah. Last episode, obviously, we talked about where we were,
And
where
what
we've
been doing.
and then how we're back. So this episode probably makes sense to talk about this season and like where we're
Kickoff of 2024, baby.
Yeah,
Which we, are super excited about as of this week.
this week.
Yeah.
Yes, and as we're recording this, go ahead.
Go ahead.
It's opener
All right, I was just going to say,
essentially.
as of this week, have you been out shooting your bow at all?
Before we get to that,
Okay.
We have this really cool opportunity to be this sponsored podcast. Okay,
Ooh.
and
We're sponsored?
I have two companies in mind.
that are
okay.
clamoring to get us now that they
Yes,
know
they
we're
are.
back.
Okay.
you want to hear them?
Okay.
Taylor's Landscaping and Outdoor Services.
Dude, I heard they're the hottest growing landscaping service provider
Twin
in the
Ports?
Twin Ports.
We service Cloquet.
I mean, we will drive. I mean,
What do you mean by we?
they will drive.
They.
And,
Oh.
I mean, premium work. I don't know. Do you actually know anyone who might also want to sponsor the podcast?
There's actually this gym that reached out to me that
Okay.
has really no connection with hunting, but they're just like, yo, you have such a great growing platform.
Yeah, what's the gym?
And the gym is Dranger Jiu-Jitsu.
So
And
jits. Sick.
Yeah. They prefer you not to call it jits. It sounds kind of weird.
Oh, okay. They're kind of snowflakes about that.
They're kind of snowflakes. They prefer to be a little more sophisticated than that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu.
Usually, okay, I'm not gonna,
But yeah, they were like, yo, we recognize the growth potential of your platform. We saw what it was and what it's going to be.
Yeah.
That we would like to be an initial investor.
no brainer, really.
And so
if you think
I
about
think
it,
being backed by these two companies
Yeah.
would
we're
it's
really.
just-
I mean, we're going to the moon,
yeah,
dude.
we are
Oh.
going to the moon. So
Yeah, so anyone else who's interested in hopping on the bandwagon with those two phenomenal
company
businesses,
that we have no affiliation with.
yeah, definitely not sponsored by proxy.
Definitely don't own those businesses.
You definitely don't own one, and I definitely don't own one of those.
True.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
A truer statement has never been made.
From here forward, you will talk about Taylor's Landscaping, and I will
you-
talk about Dranger.
Okay. I wanted to say that I was going to bring it up before we started
that's
recording,
good.
but I was
That's
like,
good.
We'll just talk about
Sponsored today by Dranger Jiu-Jitsu and Taylor Landscaping Company for all your needs.
we're going to have to work on that because it's Taylor's Landscaping and Outdoor Services. It's a real mouthful.
Mistakes were made, but here we are.
You should see our email.
No
it's the
comment.
longest email you've ever seen.
No comment. Anyhow.
2024, dude.
2024 hunting season.
Okay.
Have you shot your bow yet?
Okay,
That's
hold
all I
on.
want to know.
So
I
we talked about
legitimately-
our we call it the Venator alumni group text,
Yes.
and I sent a video. Excuse me. And I was literally laughing sending it because I was like, we're doing everything we ever talked about not doing going into a season.
Which is nothing.
Yes, there was. There was. It's nice now. Hopefully, they've listened to the last episode, right? Because it kind of gives context. But it was like there's been no scouting,
Yep. Check.
no shooting the bow,
Check.
no e-scouting,
Ooh, check.
and that all changed about a week ago.
Ooh.
So that's really good, right?
Ooh. Dude, you're the quintessential hunter. Like you, sir, are what makes up the average bow hunter in North America. I couldn't be more proud of you.
I actually don't think so.
You represent
There's
the average
no
man.
way that is possible.
Dude,
Can I tell you why
Okay.
I feel that way?
You give me your case and I'll give you my case.
I feel so lost in the woods right now.
Okay.
So I'm going to historical pins and all that, and
Yep.
and like we talked about, it's to go check out where
I may or may not have trail camera pins, and I may or may not have
Trail
left
cameras.
a trail camera or just forgot to delete the pin when I grabbed the trail camera, and I can't remember in either direction whether that was the case.
And so we're just going out there And historically, like I had really good bucks on these spots.
3
high
years ago.
Yes, exactly. Right. Historically, and like high deer traffic and density, and like, and so I'm going to these areas, and I'm like, this isn't the same place anymore. And so I literally, so to me, when I'm looking at it, because like right now, I there's no place for me to set. I cannot like in good conscience set up a stand, and the season started.
Yep. As of today.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
of today.
And so that's why I'm like, this can't be like to me, that doesn't feel like the average bow hunter. You think they go in at 0 and just go, hey, here's some here's some trees. There should be some deer here.
Okay.
And then hang a stand. Are you about to give me a hot take on this? Are we about to offend some people?
So I'm not going to drop names because they're not going to listen to this. But the guys that I first started hunting with, quite a few years ago now in bow hunting, it's pretty much what happened. It was like, hey, like maybe the week of, like, hey, here's where we're going to be going. And it was all based off of like, hey, here's a field we're going to set up on. We're going to hope that the deer come. And people didn't really shoot till the week of or 2 weeks out. And you just went out. You went
Archery or rifle?
archery.
See,
This is what I was introduced to when I first started archery hunting.
so to me,
first started hunting.
Yeah.
period.
So I legitimately think, I mean, outside of being like, hey, I'm going for this class of
deer, right? Like outside of that, I think you can totally get away with that rifle hunting.
Yeah.
You just have so much range. If you have an idea of how landscapes are, and
most
you have,
of, most of those people are going to the spots they already know.
yeah, exactly. And so like I can see that when I want to be within like 20 yards, I would also.
I would love to be with the 20 deer.
I just want to be within the same space of one deer that I actually want.
Touche.
So, yeah, rifle season, I think you can totally almost basically get away with that, especially if you're going to the same place and you kind of have some familiarity with it.
And the bucks are in
Rut.
rut.
Yeah,
so they're stupid. It's easy.
well, usually rut's over by the time Wisconsin.
Okay, Minnesota, we actually have a rifle season during actual rut. So,
I mean, it varies for sure, but I want to. Usually, we're on the tail end of it, or it is like over, and that's part of why we just do deer drives.
yeah.
For a while,
And it's not illegal.
the people that I now do deer drives with, they do a lot of baiting and stands, and then I was like, we're just.
That's a 4-letter word in Minnesota.
I know.
Baiting.
And so
Definitely more than
but
4
now
letters.
it's evolved to like, we're just going to burn ground with
Yeah.
deer drives, and we're getting meat. If we get a buck, great. If not,
Cool.
Okay.
Yo.
yeah. So anyways, I guess that is why I'm like, that feels, so where I started with archery hunting
Yeah.
was like deep dive immediately.
Yeah.
Shoot your bow year round.
Yup.
Scouting year round.
Yup.
And e-scouting, finding new places you want to go and like check out year round.
Yup. And none of that.
And there's zero of that for sure. 2.5 years, close to 3 years of like actual.
Yeah. Because you were busy starting up your own business, trying to
Right.
provide for your family
Well,
and making it bigger.
Well, and this is where like
Because you didn't have enough kids.
well, I didn't have a daughter. Okay, we had
You
to keep,
really
we had to keep
wanted
going.
that daughter.
We got the daughter. All right, now we're done. Okay,
Allegedly.
So, like, I don't want to be genuinely. I don't want to be disparaging if that is how people do it. That's just not what is normal to me,
To you.
and so it's really weird.
Yup.
Like, I know that everybody's not putting in the same level of effort, obviously, and whatever. But it's really because of how lost I feel in the woods.
Because you're out of your norm.
Yeah, I'm like,
It's everything you've done before. You're not
Yeah.
doing, you haven't done.
yeah, like I go there and I look and I'm like, I know what it was.
Do you feel like a deer caught in the headlights?
Oh, that's good.
Bum, bum, bum,
Oh,
bum.
Dusty. Okay, here we go. We're warming up.
Woo, we're back.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so that like, it's not off-putting, but like it's almost shocking to me. Like, you think that's the norm. Mm-hmm. Genuinely.
I think it's closer to the norm than what like we've done, because in the people
I could
left-
see private land. That would make sense to me, right? You're dealing with the same plot of land.
Yeah,
Right. Nobody else is pushed like.
and maybe it's changed over the last few years, especially with the proliferation of social media and people out hunting. But given kind of what I've seen, like I don't think it's that far off from. Well, I don't know.
And here's the other thing. I have no idea if like the same amount of people are hunting.
Yeah,
I don't know if like there's higher pressure, lower pressure. I don't know what's happening with that either. I literally
because you haven't been out in 3
I
years.
literally drove around this morning of areas I hunt to see if there were vehicles.
And what did you find?
Not a lot of vehicles. It's also, I mean, it's September, so it's early. But I figured the first day, like people might be excited just to get out. I mean, we saw a couple of vehicles, but like,
Yeah, no,
I was like, there's
nothing. So that's good.
is it? I don't know anymore.
I don't know. Like if you're not seeing tons of vehicles, so but I
Okay,
would-
but anyway, so
okay,
that was
continue.
that was mainly to touch on the how I feel, why I feel that way. That it doesn't feel normal to me. So I guess where do we want to start on like?
Well, I
this
guess maybe
season?
we should
Yeah.
preface this with maybe we aren't the ones to really give a detailed expose on the current status of hunting, being that we haven't really been that involved, especially this last year.
Yeah. It was more of a question. So if there's
just-
anyone who happens to listen to this that feels like they've got their finger on the pulse, please, like genuinely, I am like so out of the loop.
Yes,
Because I really felt like because of how frequent I was going to these different areas, like I felt like I knew more or less what was going on and like how intense it was or wasn't. I would love to hear like someone's perspective who's been,
So
just
anybody
been
in Superior,
consistently.
Wisconsin, please chime in.
Please.
Please.
Okay, so we were talking about all the things I wasn't doing: shooting my bow,
Yep.
boots on the ground scouting, e-scouting.
Yep.
Okay, so within the last week and a half or so,
Yep.
all those things have started. And like I said, I had sent a video, me like literally laughing, being like, I'm doing literally all the things we said
I've
not
become
to do.
the very thing I hate.
That's basically what it was. So
As they say, die the hero or live long enough to become the villain.
there you go. There you go. So I guess one thing that if we're thinking about this fairly,
Okay.
I think it can give us a better perspective on people that are doing what I'm doing right now,
Yep.
where hunting is a hobby
Yep.
for the most part.
Yep.
Should be. I get hyperfixated. Doesn't feel like it. Like, it doesn't feel like it's a hobby, right? But it is a hobby. And people have numerous things going on in life.
Yep.
And sometimes what I'm doing right now is what you have the time for.
Yep.
And I would say before,
You look down on those people.
yeah, my assumption is
You look down
that
on
you
the mere
should be
mortals.
doing what I'm doing or more.
Yep.
And if you're not,
You're
then
less. You're subhuman.
it's letting. Thank you for putting it so delicately. Yeah. So it's kind of made me like realize where it's like, oh, like if anyone cared about my life outside of hunting, like it's totally understandable, right? But knowing how I was like, we would hate me. It's like
At
we
this-
would not like.
3 years ago,
Exactly.
we would have looked down at you.
Yes, exactly.
Our nose would have been turned up.
yeah. So if anything, I think it's given me perspective,
But for how long?
Just long enough.
how
for me to
long,
get
though?
back up to speed so that I can then look down on everybody again.
No.
Because that's the thing that
That's
we talked
not my-
about
my
with
heart with
how
that.
how you and I operate though, is it tends to be we either get hyper fixated
Fixated.
on it
Yep.
or we're just it's all or nothing.
Yep.
It's all or nothing. So
Which is-
given history,
Yes. Which I would say in the last 3 years, which is why we had talked about in the previous episode, was like the working on balance, not just in hunting, but
Yeah.
in life and things
You enjoy, you're passionate about, like still being able to enjoy those without it being all or nothing.
Yeah.
Because what happened was it went to a lot of nothing for the things that like I enjoyed, whether it was podcasting, hunting, all went to the wayside. Probably rightfully so for a season.
Yeah.
But now, like stepping back into it, there's just because of just personal growth and intentional work on that, both with my family and my wife. Stepping back into it, there's a lot more intention with it, and it's like, okay, I don't want this to consume me, but I also don't want to just not have it at all.
Yeah.
Right, because there's a lot of good as well. And so,
yeah. So all the things I wasn't doing, I started doing about a week and a half ago with my brother-in-law, and dude, I feel as lost or very close to as lost as I did when I started trying to learn how to break land down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm still getting over hating big woods because of the lack of diversity.
I think
Like,
that's
there's-
just
I'll get over
an
it.
eternal hate.
I know I'll
It
get
just
over
sucks.
it. I'll get over
It
it.
just sucks. Like, I envy people like Seth Taylor.
Oh,
you
just
know.
put him on blast.
I will put him
It's
on
not like what he
blast
does
every
is easy.
opportunity.
I mean, hunting cash crops.
I mean,
is
it's
tough,
not like
dude.
he sends us a video of all these little
bucks that we'd be happy
bucks.
to shoot.
Exactly. Like I would dream of. He's like, meh.
He's like, look how cute this little guy is.
Yeah.
Oh, he's under 200, so we're gonna have to let him walk.
Yep.
I'm just kidding. Seth's not that bad. 190 he'd take.
This is
Sorry, Seth.
3 years and we're already hated on him.
Well, it's like we didn't miss a day.
No.
so anyway, like I was saying, like before what had happened, and this is kind of what I'm leaning on going into the future again here, is that
Initially I was like, oh, this is really hard to break down and like digest all these areas, and then not only did the e-scouting of like, okay, well, where should I even start,
Yeah.
to then boots on the ground, starting to build up a portfolio, getting some actual data from the area. And that's what got me away from probably having such disdain that I'm feeling at the moment for the big woods and the lack of like I'm not finding oak. I don't see an oak tree when I'm out.
Yeah.
Like today I walked over 4 miles, probably 3 miles.
not a single oak tree, and I'm like, so what highlighted in me also is like, oh, I need to get better at identifying like a food source, and
That's one of the hard things like these guys talk about.
It's
Like,
so-
hey, identify high food sources. Great. Which one?
yes,
Because
and,
we have
hunt water.
So, yeah. We
I can
live in
walk 50
Wisconsin and
yards in
Minnesota.
I can walk in 50 yards in any direction and hit water.
and there's water.
yeah. So I think I'm at the stage.
Now, and also it's fun because I get to share it. Like we've gone on our little weekend or our long weekend hunts, and then we've gone on years ago where you pop over to Superior and we go on some hunts. But being able to kind of work through it, digest it with having Mikey out there and just verbally working through things, which I'm an auditory processor anyway.
Yeah.
And so it actually helps me to be like just talking it out loud about what I'm thinking and then being like, what do you think? Like giving him an opportunity to try to critically think through.
Yeah.
It's like, where do you think this trail cam should go? Like, what do you see? Which direction do you think we should go?
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of leaning on like the
Getting back to the point.
of. Oh, you messed up my headset. It's okay.
Oh, no.
I'm not cutting this out of the podcast.
Whew.
I got it. Yep,
Did
I'm
you
fixed.
get that
Oh yeah.
wonderful sound
Is
of
that a whiskey cork popping, perhaps? All right, dude.
celebrating?
God, I've started saying this point like 3 times. Maybe the 4th time's the charm. But relying that I'll get back to the point of getting
point
enough
you're
boots
making.
on.
Yeah, getting enough boots on the ground, getting some actual intel that gets me kind of up to speed again for the area.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I mean, also every area, like I've e-scouted and been like, hey, we got to check out this area, and intentionally picking spots that I haven't been to.
Yeah.
And as soon as I get like exactly where I'm saying, camera and someone's tree stand. And you're like, all right, well, I've got the right idea. Like I'm, at least remembering some parts of this.
Yeah.
But
Are you sure it's not a tree stand and camera you might have left?
I can't be 100% certain, but I'm nearly. I mean, I only use a climber, so yeah, it's probably not.
Definitely
probably
not your
mine.
tree stand, but camera.
Yeah, yeah. so yeah, as far as like the scouting side of it, feeling really lost in the woods. It's exciting on one hand.
Yeah.
Because it kind of like we talked
It's-
about, like that
it's
fire.
renewed.
Like this renewed energy and vigor for it, and being like, okay, it's not what it was. So now you get to figure it out again. It's like a puzzle you got to try to solve. Super tough. I just have so many lines.
You just feel lost.
Yeah, we'll just say that. And then as far as like shooting the bow, I have shot, I think.
Yes, finally answer that question.
Yes. How many shots?
I would say somewhat generously, probably 60 to 80 arrows
Oh, okay. That's actually more than I
in the
thought.
last 3 years.
Oh,
And
you were gonna say
the
this
vast
week.
no, the vast majority is from this week.
okay. All right.
Yeah.
How has that process been?
Interesting.
Do you feel good? Do you feel bad? Do you feel neutral?
Well, let's put it this way. As I'm shooting,
Okay.
and I'm shooting with my brother-in-law again, like kind of tweaking things as we go,
Yep.
and being able to talk through, like things will start to come back, and it's like, oh yeah, remember this. Oh yeah, remember this. Remember this. And so it's like starting to get kind of the memories getting
Refreshed.
jogged, and the dust is kind of falling off with it,
Which, speaking of, we've had a lot of dust we've taken off of things,
including
like
our
podcast
our
equipment
Zoom
that you
H6.
that you literally blew dust off of.
Yeah, that's not a figure of speech. I literally had to blow the
Quite
dust off of it.
literally.
It was hilarious.
Yeah. So, as far as the actual shooting goes, the physical side is what I'm trying to get dialed back into,
Okay.
where it's like making sure my arm's right, making sure my anchor point's right, making sure my peep's right, making sure my bubble's right, like that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then the mental side, like I fully accepted at the moment that like I'm not like, oh yeah, pull through, blah blah blah. I'm not slapping the trigger, and like Mikey and I have talked about that, and I'm like, make sure it's not just this like total dude.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say make sure. Some people do great with that. But it's something he and I have talked about.
And it's like trying to get the feel. And I remember it being like such a, like, it was just like second nature
Yeah.
doing it when I was shooting so much. And then now it's like this little bit more rigid activity where it's like you remember one part, you forget another part. But I will say, like, just shooting the bow and the joy of flinging arrows is kind of what I'm relishing in at the moment.
Feeling it again.
Yeah. And so like even like sighting it in, right? Because I'm like, oh, I probably should make sure that my 20-yard pin is on.
Yeah.
At the very
Dude,
least.
Okay, kind of circling back to our previous conversation about the state of bow hunting, this is another thing that leads me to believe that we're a little more screwed than hopeful. Is I saw a post.
I thought you said we weren't in the position to give the state of archery and hunting.
Probably not, but here I am.
Here's what I
I
saw on
did
Instagram.
see from I was on Instagram from Archery Hooligan. He had reshared a post of somebody's Facebook post that I've just purchased these. I forget what brand it was, like their new arrows that just came out. Like, is anybody else like having to resight their bow in, or are these good to go? Literally bought new arrows and like the fact that that's not even like
I thought you were going to talk about a post that I recently saw about a guy shooting a caribou at 140 some yards with a bow.
yeah.
Anyways,
Anyhow, so I
We're
mean,
in a great state.
circling back to our previous conversation, like I said, I don't know. The average state of the archery community, I don't think it has a lot to be desired. We'll leave it at that. Back to your story, Ethan Taylor.
yeah, that's painting with a broad stroke. We really don't know.
Broad stroke or a broad head?
Broad stroke.
Mm,
I think
okay.
that's a broad characterization off of one post.
Just saying. Just saying. Anyhow,
I'm
continuing on
I'm
your experience.
I don't even know what we were talking about, but I will tell you that like I'm getting questions
Okay.
from Mikey that are totally fair questions based off of where he's at.
Yeah.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
That he's like, hey, what the heck is like? What am I supposed to do with this?
Yep.
And it's like,
Because
oh, yeah,
there's actually quite a bit to learning how to
that's what I,
shoot a bow and archery hunting. Like there's a lot. Like I would say there's a lot more than rifle season, even though there's a lot of nuance in firearms. Like
Yeah,
don't get me wrong.
yeah.
Like I literally came from a firearms competition today.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of nuance. So
Yeah.
don't hear what I'm not saying. But with archery, I feel like the ability for greater error is a lot more than with rifle. So
I would agree. Most people like, yeah, for deer drives, for example, if my gun's sighted in at 100 yards,
it's point and shoot.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah. It's
Based off of how I'm hunting.
yeah.
And if in like
There's
we're
a
in the
lot
big
less
woods,
variables.
Yeah, like I'm not trying to reach out to 600 to 1,000 yards, 500 yards even,
Yep.
right?
So I'm good. When I started talking with Mikey, and like again, all this stuff had been put so far in the back of my mind that as we're talking and he's asking these questions, I'm like, oh well, how much is your how many grains is your arrow? What's your FOC? And I'm like started thinking about all
0.
these things, right? Like, and I probably wouldn't have been able to answer his question anyway.
Yeah.
But I was like, I vaguely remember these being somewhat important when starting to try to, really dial in everything.
Well, when you think about the difference between this ammunition, if we can figure it out, what speed is this ammo traveling at? We can plug that in, and there is good scientific mathematical equations to figure out here's what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
Whereas with archery, there's way more variables going into that whole equation that we can't just plug that simple information into a calculator.
Your draw length needs to be correct. Your peep sight needs to be in the correct area. Your arrow rest needs to be perfect.
Yeah.
You could go, on and on and on.
Yeah.
Right? And then you get into your actual
Have you tuned
arrow.
from field
Yeah.
point to broadhead?
Yes. And what's the literally, what's your shaft's natural? Which way does it naturally spin? Or
We're not that good, so
I know, but that's what I'm saying. You could.
we're not Levi Morgan.
Yeah. But those are things
spinning left or is it spinning right?
Right, but we've also talked about almost all of those things.
Yes.
And we've built arrows around
3
a lot
years
of those.
ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And so it's
Which
nice
feels
to-
so weird to say.
It feels really weird.
And it's nice to be able to pick up my arrows now, knowing that we had the thought put into it
Yeah.
at one point. And so, I know I'm good. It's just
I
I
question
need to
the arrow builder though of your arrows.
Yeah, well, at least the fletching. That always was getting.
I heard he did fix that. Heard he had some errors.
He did fix it. I've got a few that have some fletchings that have holes in it, which aren't his problem. It's just those super tight groups someone's shooting.
Oh, from 3
Okay.
years ago.
Okay,
Continue to
I literally
squirrel.
where we yeah. So on brand right now.
So we were talking about
Definitely
shooting
not the
bows,
whiskey
right?
talking.
Yeah, no, I haven't. Just a sip. So we were talking about shooting bows. Mm-hmm. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mikey, and he's all these questions
Yeah.
he's having,
Yeah.
refreshing your memory and being
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, yeah.
And
This.
a lot of that has refreshed it in the sense of I remember this being important,
Yeah.
but I need to go back and actually dig back into that to figure out all right, what are the impacts of this? And
There's been a lot of things where I'm like,
Do you feel like with those questions he's asking and kind of coming in, having to renew everything, do you feel like it's also helping you have better questions yourself?
100%. And I think it's also helping me realize and set some expectations for myself. So we obviously compiled,
we were talking about even hunting equipment, right?
Yeah.
So the type of clothes you have, your gear, your whole gear system, what you have in your backpack, what you're bringing out. all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I just remember initially being really overwhelmed, or like, hey, I need all this stuff, and then over the years, kind of getting a lot of those things, I'll say. And Mikey's at the stage where he kind of needs pretty much I would say a lot of it.
Yep.
And so he's like, hey, what do you like talking about these things we should have and all that stuff. And I'm like, I told him today, I was like, if you have a bow, you have a release, you can shoot it, like you can shoot your bow well, and you can, you're not get hypothermia while you're out there.
And a stand.
Yeah. Well, we don't even have a stand yet.
Oh, okay.
He's actually gonna end up using Jesse's probably this year because Jesse's not getting out, I don't think.
Sad.
But anyway, the point being is that like you have a chance to get a deer.
Yeah.
Everything like a lot. Like I'm like, next thing I would do is a rangefinder personally. Like at that point, as long as you're able to stay warm, like again, like being able to actually be out in the woods.
Yep. And stay out in the woods.
Yeah, I was like, a lot of the stuff I've realized are kind of like quality of life things versus I can physically go out and I can be in the woods. That's what gives me an opportunity to get a deer. And the knowledge. That was another thing we hit on. It was where it's like wind direction. Yeah, scent control. Like I used to be super OCD about scent control. Then I kind of got relaxed on it.
Yeah, I'll still use my ozonics, but I'm not like waiting to get out to the stand before I put my clothes on type of thing, and just trying to find a balance in that. Because I do think it gives you percentage increase, right? Where hey, maybe I get away with it for another 2 yards.
Sure.
You literally don't think it matters.
I don't think it matters.
Okay.
We're not getting into this right now.
After the years I've invested the last 3 years, I don't think it matters.
Yeah, you get a trad bow, and literally everyone's like, "Oh, you got to wear flannels and smoke a cigar while you're in the stand. It'll be fine."
Yep, pretty much.
Yep, that's on brand.
It's not taking away your sense. It's all about scent masking. Cigars do that. Look into it.
I will say one of my brothers swears by smoking cigarettes that it brings in deer. So there's that.
The debate rages on. Anyways, but like the big thing being like the knowledge of like, okay, if I can't do like incredible scent control and I don't want to like dive into that, which is an investment essentially of time and money.
Yep.
What can I like? Then what is like the next thing above that is more important? It's just wind direction.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Be aware of the wind direction, how you're going into an area. Like right now, I'm like, we're talking about these spots where it's like, okay, we see this sign. How would we hunt this sign?
Yeah.
Where would we come in? What wind would be most desirable?
Yep.
Right? And it's like,
imagine the way you walk in. If the wind's right, just imagine everything behind you is burnt. Not to say that a deer couldn't come from there, because that happens.
Yeah.
But just imagine that that's burnt, but you're setting yourself up for what you believe will bring you the most success.
Yep. Dude, and that's something that honestly, when I first started, and maybe it was just the resources I was plugged into, but it wasn't till a decent time into hunting where like really the reality of wind helping control your scent was so important.
oh,
Like,
really?
like, yeah,
Like the
like-
wind you didn't factor
Like
that in
I didn't really
mentally?
have anybody like really
Yeah.
kind of harping home like, hey, this is not only like super important, but just super helpful. Do you understand the wind and thermals even?
Yeah.
Like
Yep,
thermals
yep,
is a
yep.
huge thing. Like
Yeah, which I haven't
is it
dove
pulling?
into
Is it
yet.
raising?
Yeah, I haven't
like,
dove into that with him yet.
the experiences I've had, like realizing how important that really is,
Mm-hmm.
just like what is pulling or redirecting your scent is being more important than your freaking ozonics thingy taking a scent
first,
away. Like,
dude, hold on. First of all, I won that on an Instagram giveaway.
Cool.
Okay, so 100% worth the money I paid.
I guess I'm speaking from experience, having spent $25 for some stupid little ozonics thing way back in the day, and realizing this
like
thing
your
does
car outlet.
yeah, like this does crap. As I'm driving a vehicle that has a freaking
Coolant leak, you're stepping in. And
yeah. So, but like realizing, like ultimately coming back to like, no, what's the wind doing? What's thermals doing? And how important that is. Like, it's those little things that didn't really get home in the midst of the proliferation of cool tech and sponsorships, because obviously 100 years ago, people didn't have ozonics, they didn't have stupid sprays, like they had none of that, but they were smart enough to understand wind and thermals.
Well, and I think yes, and I think we're like diving into the weeds a little bit,
Yeah.
a little
Sorry,
bit.
that's a little tangent.
No, it's okay because I think what I guess I'm trying to get at.
Okay.
In working with Mikey, and what's been helpful to me,
And it might
It's
be the
like-
scotch in me talking right now.
dude, it could be, tough to say.
But what I'm getting at with bringing these things up is that it's helped me kind of coming in feeling a little bit lost and like, okay, wait, what's important again?
Yeah.
Like how it's the reprioritization of like what are the top level things that are important to keep in mind. And then as time goes on, like I can add this or that, and maybe that'll give me a % or two of increased odds, right? Or
However you want to look at it. But it's giving me this top level view where it's like I'm trying to make this digestible to someone who's new in archery.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is too is like his goal for this year is like getting a doe. Really anything would be a big win. But he's coming with me and I'm like scouting because I want to get a buck. Like that I would be excited to shoot.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't need to be a certain size necessarily. I mean, obviously size will influence whether I shoot it or not. But at the end of the day, at the heart of it, it's like I want to be excited about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so he's like seeing the things, and we're talking through the things that I'm thinking about going in there, and trying to
Filter it down in a digestible way where it's like, okay, but at the might be talking about a nuance.
but there's these high level things that are like to me at least seem really important and like top of mind things when you're approaching an area, how to break it down, how you would want to hunt it, things you would want to keep in mind when you're
Like doing that.
and even like with your bow and shooting it, like, okay, hey, maybe we're not shooting out to 60 yards. I mean, most of our shots are going to be 20 and less.
Yep.
And so just really focus on getting confident at 20 yards.
Yeah.
Make sure your broadheads are flying true at 20 yards,
Yep.
right? Like
I mean,
that-
they say, I think the national average is like 17 or 18 yards, whether traditional or compound.
I think traditional is what, 8 yards you said?
Probably 8
Like,
feet.
At least
8 feet.
At least like at archery shoots.
Yeah.
So like we're starting to do the e-scouting,
Yeah.
kind of breaking that down, digesting it. I've had to watch a lot of old videos that really helped me.
Yeah.
Kind of mentally work through those areas. Because I keep finding myself frustrated out in the field of like, and it's early season. And so there's just overgrowth everywhere. Everything's green.
Those big
Soup.
woods, man. Those big woods.
Like, it doesn't matter. Everything's green.
Yes.
Like bucks aren't like laying down heavy sign. Mm-hmm. If you find a rub, it's from last year or velvet, like that they're just trying to get off,
whatever it might be. And so trying to like just recalibrate everything and get my head on straight with it. And then like he and I have talked about like what our expectations are for this year. So I don't know. I'll maybe pause at that point and let
Okay.
you kind of say like, how much have you shot your bow this year? How much scouting have you done this year, Dusty?
man.
now you're in the hot seat.
All right. So for
dirty
me,
dog.
I know. I mean, I'd like to say that I've been doing, just tons on both ends. But unfortunately, I don't think I picked my bow up in, no lie, probably almost a year.
That's so disgusting.
Like-
I would never do that.
Because I went out last year a few times. I shot a little bit before, but I don't know. I don't think I legitimately do. I don't even think I picked it up at all in a year, and it wasn't until 2 weeks ago I picked it up. 2 weeks ago,
Was this before or after we started texting?
a little bit before, because I was
Sure.
like, okay, like hunting season's coming up. I knew I was going to go out. I'm like, okay, I should at least go fling a few arrows. And so it was a solid year. But what was it?
The trad gods are so disappointed.
Oh, the vengeance and hatred of the trad gods are probably coming down hard.
Don't be surprised if you don't see a single deer this year.
Yeah. But what was interesting, so kind of backing up a little bit into last summer, I actually ended up getting hit with just the worst case of target panic.
Not real. Not real. Hot take, not real. I'm kidding. Continue.
Sure. If that's not real, I don't know what I had.
You don't have a sight on a trad bow, dude.
I know, but that's oh man, I got hit with, it was bad. Like it got to the point where I would literally, grab my bow, go through the motion. As soon as that string came back and I went to set, I would be flinging it. Like it was unreal. Like,
You know who else had target panic really bad?
who?
Based on what you're saying, like just as soon as you pull it back, you
Yeah.
go Legolas from Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of
He
true.
was
He
super-
did. Yeah,
he
he
was
would just
super
draw back.
accurate, though.
Wham. The difference between Legolas and me was
His
Legolas.
follow up was
hit.
way quicker.
He hit whatever he was aiming at. I didn't. And it just got to the point, like, it was bad. Like, going into hunting season last year, which was probably one of the factors really lately, I think, influencing, like, why I didn't go out as much. Like, I just really wasn't feeling comfortable. And I just had to get to the point where, like, I wasn't, even last year, I wasn't going into the season even shooting a whole lot. Where, like, for me, the biggest thing was just like, okay, I need to step back. Like, when I first started into the trad world, I was shooting 20, 30, 40 yards. Even the last time we went to Bowfest 3 years ago, I was shooting out to like 40, 50 yards.
Still not hitting the target, but you were shooting.
I was shooting. Actually, there's video proof on our page showing that I hit it like 50 yards. So
Yeah, I just deactivated that. We're doing a restart.
if that's why I couldn't get logged in. But like, I just had to like have a mental reset of like, okay, here's where I'm at. I have issues, and it's all mental. To where like I just had to go out and through this course of this last year, which was last fall, and then starting up again this fall, was the biggest thing that I'm focusing in on was going out and just going through my draw cycle, getting the draw, getting anchoring, working on expanding and not letting go, and just letting down, and just repeating this process over. What is
That's
that?
fireworks outside. Yeah, people.
Okay, that is fireworks.
Yeah, so
I'm gonna say
apparently
we
people are celebrating that we're starting the podcast again. Anyway, continue.
People are excited.
Yeah,
Actually,
people
for
are
a while,
fired up. Pun intended.
I was worried that being in Superior, that wasn't actual fireworks.
That's fine. We got guns here. We got guns everywhere.
And so, like, this fall, even kind of going in, like, my biggest hurdle has still kind of really owning the mental side of things. Like, I feel like as far as, like, okay, if I do everything that I'm supposed to, like the physical process, my shot is decent out to 20. Like, and, like, I've had to really, like, step back from like, oh yeah, I used to be able to shoot 40, 50 yards with the trad bow to like, no, like, and part of that has changed with the equipment. Like I've gone, one of the big things is over the last couple of years, I went from shooting a recurve with some really high end limbs that were flinging arrows super fast for quote unquote a recurve to actually switching over to longbow limbs. And switching over to the whole longbow platform, which I've ultimately really loved. Like it's actually really interesting, the difference in the draw cycle from a recurve limb to longbow limbs. Really have enjoyed that. Actually, it's found it being really helpful, but it does shorten kind of.
Would you consider that a regression from as far as technology?
Yes.
So like Addle is coming at some point.
Probably
you will encounter
Probably.
that. I'm very excited
jumping
for
out of the trees, buck naked
Yeah.
with a knife.
Oh.
Probably coming.
that. Yeah, let's go. I'm filming.
But just mentally, like really having to work on those reps of gaining control again of the whole process. Which I kind of think it kind of goes back to the idea like maybe I actually never had full mental control of the process in the first place.
It's like Inception.
Yeah, kind of like in some ways. But what was interesting in kind of getting back in the last couple of weeks of shooting again, there's been a couple major, like huge improvements that I've figured out from both my grip, which is I feel like there's some things that have plagued me. One, my grip, my draw cycle, and then my anchoring. I'm still figuring out my anchoring, but the grip I have figured out, like for the longest time, I think this is the first step in the process of I've had my finger too far at the fingertips, so I have not I've recently gone to a really deeper grip, which has actually given me better control versus being at my fingertips, which I have lacked control and felt like the string wanted to jump out of my
Yeah,
hand.
just kind of like snap.
And I think that's what really caused my issue in the first place was I just create a lot of jumpiness because like my fingers are getting expanded and like everything is just kind of like, oh, I gotta go, I gotta release versus like setting a deep grip, like far deeper than I ever learned to do in the first place, but really getting to the point where like, oh, like, wow, no, I feel like this is stable and it's controlled and it's really like kind of like how you would grab a 5-gallon bucket full of water.
Yeah.
But you're not grabbing it at the fingertips, you're grabbing it deep into
you're
like
at
your
the
second
base.
knuckle.
Yeah, you're at the
You're like your
yeah.
knuckles, your second knuckles.
Yep.
And I finally got to the point where like, oh no, that's actually a really good thing. And it's cleaned up my release.
Yeah.
Ironically. And then just kind of figuring out like on the last couple of weeks when I've gone through my whole shot process of just the angle I need to start at, I kind of finally figured out like, oh, I need to be here versus like, and this is a podcast, not a video, but like I was just starting too far out as a right-hand shooter outside my shoulder line versus keeping my bow in line with my shoulder line and feel really good about that. So like in some sense, I'm very grateful for kind of the break I've had because it allowed me to reset and reanalyze what's happening and play around. And so in the last couple of weeks, I've actually gained a lot of good mental control, physical control, feeling really good.
But all this to say you've shot 6 arrows.
7.
Seven
actually.
in the last. Okay,
7, yeah.
beautiful.
So, but no,
That's good.
actually, kind of going into the whole practice in the last couple of weeks, like I've really realized like how like lacking I am on that endurance aspect. Like I get out and I start shooting 30, 40 arrows and like I'm feeling it.
Well, and that's
by
what
the
that's
end
one
of
thing
it.
I've talked about with Mikey, even where like I'm like,
We're shooting arrows together, and his form's looking better and better. And when we get up into that 50, 60 range or whatever, or even 30 range, to be honest,
Arrows or yards?
arrows,
Okay.
where we start to get in that range, and then we're looking at like moving our sights, and I just tell him flat out, I'm like, I know I'm not shooting good enough to justify moving. Like starting to do the more fine tuning.
Yeah. Yep.
of my pins, and I'm like, right now, like our shots aren't reliable
Yeah.
to be like, oh yeah, I need to move this up or down or left or right.
I'm just like, it's great to be out here shooting, and getting the reps in and like trying to get some repetition and
Like start to get the mental side of it down a little bit.
but really trying to get the physical side down. And like you said, just the physical reps, getting back into the swing of things with that. But yeah, that's like one thing where it's just like, it's not worth even trying to do that. Like that part.
Early on in our shots, once we are shooting consistent, like shooting the same way over and
Yeah.
over, great. Like we both feel pretty good at 20 yards type of thing.
Yep.
But when we start moving out, obviously it kind of like your mistakes start to compound, and it really starts to becomes glaringly obvious what you need to do. But if we're starting, at 30 yards, 40 yards when we're tired,
Yeah.
I'm not going to start just changing stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know I'm not good enough to do that right now.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big, like, almost in a sense, a helpful mental shift, though, was, I think, 3 years ago, we were doing this, like, we
Right.
were going out
When we reached the pinnacle.
yeah. 20, 30, 40, 50 yards. Like, we were really trying to push, like, if I shoot longer, he'll help me with the shorter, which in some aspects, yes, I think it was very true. But now having to, like, come back into all of this.
Well, when we were shooting longer, it was exasperating the
errors.
mistakes
Yep.
and the errors we were having in our shot process, whatever it might be. It made it really clear what was
Yep.
happening, right?
Yep. But one of the things I've been finding really helpful is like, okay, well, one, kind of coming back to, okay, what's the average distance these animals are being shot at? Okay, like that, it kind of going back into the Pareto principle, which is something we use at my gym for jiu-jitsu, is like 20% of the things that we do are going to yield 80% of the results. So in reality with bow hunting, if, 80%.
You mean at our sponsors, Jim?
Yeah, Drinker
Just
Jiu-Jitsu,
double check.
one of our sponsors. 80% of the time, we could say that our shots are coming from, 20 and under. So why am I wasting a majority of my time shooting further than that versus shooting in at 20 yards and under? Maybe the variables, instead of being further, we just need to change position. Maybe I need to get up in the stand. Maybe I need to get down to my knees.
That's a massive point.
Invest my time. Okay, 80% of the time I'm probably going to be 20 and in. Okay, what variables can I change in that? And then just building the mental fortitude of like, not only like am I good here physically, but I'm good here mentally. And that for me,
That's like
has been
actually a
huge.
really good. I mean, I think it's even Seth was texting us this week about this, where it was like, yeah, we're all great at 20 yards standing, perfect, level ground and flinging arrows.
Yep.
But when you got to bend down under a branch and, you know
Yep.
what I mean? Like make it work.
And this is exactly what has happened the last few years for me. Is 3 years ago, I went out to a spot, opening day. I was able to call in a little buck. And with the way I had my tree stand set up, I knew there was this branch, like 10 yards, or maybe not even 10 yards, like 8 yards or so in front of me, that I knew I had to, like, if a deer was going to come along this pathway,
You're gonna have to
I
shoot
was going to
above
have
it or
to
below it.
shoot below it. I ended up, as this buck came through, I ended up drawing back. Everything felt great. And as I released, my arrow caught the tail end of my arrow caught that branch, sent the arrow right over the buck. Had I been an inch,
And
not
that-
even half an inch.
You would have had the
half
Boone
an inch.
Crockett buck.
Yep. Well, sure. Boone and Crockett.
No one saw it, dude.
But
Speak your truth, Dusty. Speak your truth.
it would have been on.
It probably identified as Boone and Crockett, dude.
It did. It did identify as that. 2 years ago, I was in the stand. I had another Boone and Crockett, or Crockett and Boone, however you want to call it. Come in,
Crock of something.
like literally come in, walk right under me, and as it was walking, like it presented me with the shot where like 10 yards from me, but because of the angle being up in my stand, like I just hadn't practiced that.
Yeah.
In between, not only that, but then just rushing my whole shot process. And again, kind of going back to that mental state, I wasn't in control. It was at an angle and a position I had not practiced from. Again, Pareto principle, 80% of my time is going to come from 20% of this kind of range and position. And I just hadn't practiced
And
that.
again, that's from one of our sponsors.
Yeah. Drinker
huge.
Jiu-Jitsu. The coach up there is just super smart, like, and pulls in a lot of
Everyone
these
loves
great
him.
principles. Yeah. He's
super,
a great guy.
He's a super
and I've
humble.
learned so much from
Well,
him.
super humble too. I mean, to boot. Just super humble. Okay, so
If I'm just mentally, I'm going to just quickly encapsulate this the way I'm hearing it. I think spending, like you said, 80% of our time in that 20-yard range,
Just
but,
yep.
but adding a ton of variables to it.
Yeah.
So you have depth,
Yep.
because that's most of your shots are going to be in
Yeah.
that range.
20 and under.
But then also, it doesn't mean don't shoot those longer ranges, but you also know that I mean, maybe people do have and some people will have the time, I should say,
Yep.
to be able to also practice those more difficult positions, whatever it might be, at those longer ranges.
Yep.
But the idea being like, hey, 20 yards, multiple positions, or whatever it might be, some challenges to it.
Use the longer ranges to figure out, okay, what are my inadequacies? What are my weaknesses in my process overall?
Yeah, but then also you could say as well that at those longer ranges, you can say, hey, if the circumstance and everything's perfect, I know how I can shoot at this range. I haven't had time to put in
exactly.
like adjusting for all these, crosswinds, whatever it might be.
Yep.
At that range, but then at least within the high likelihood area of 20 yards or under.
Yep.
You're like, I feel really equipped.
Yep.
And I hadn't thought about it prior to that. Okay, so that's a really long way to talk about shooting the bows and where you're at with that this year, which is good. And then how about scouting? Like,
Yeah.
you feeling super up to date, man?
So not really.
You're like, does happen to be driving by a field and I glance out the window count as scouting? Technically, yes.
Technically, yes. So there's parts of me that I have this like deep rooted desire to like. I've got this little parcel of county land. Like,
Is that the one I went to or no?
Yes, that I have half a mile down from my house. That it's really ultimately just a travel corridor. Like,
I was going to say, how big is that? It wasn't huge, was it?
it's like maybe a couple acres.
Yeah, that's hard to work with.
Yeah,
That's real
and there's a
hard to work
little bit of like and like bedding there, like here and there. But when I've put up cameras in the last like 3 to 4 years, there's been a lot of travel through them, and I've got a lot of like good bucks and activity. So
Which is good bucks objective,
yeah, for yeah,
each of their own.
exactly.
Continue.
For me, there's been a lot of good activity,
Yeah.
and it's a strong travel corridor. That's
Yeah.
what I could ultimately label it as
Yeah.
a strong travel corridor. Last year, ironically, or maybe not ironically, but funnily, I had so I previously
Funnily,
had
that's a new word.
funnily because it's a funnel.
I'm going to go with whiskey talk and continue.
Might be a scotch. Scotch.
Yes.
But so previously, a few years ago, I had gotten permission from this landowner who had property adjacent to the county land, who lived down in the cities, and he owned this land. And I had gotten permission to you can walk through my land, so you can get to the backside of the county land instead of having to walk through it. Last summer, didn't realize that the land had been sold. And walked through it.
What's the statute of limitations on this?
Well, there's no charges or issues, and I just remember last summer I walked through, and all of a sudden I'm in the county line. All of a sudden I get a call from the local sheriff. They're like, "Hey, we just got a call from so and so
How they know it was you?
because of my vehicle was parked right there."
Oh,
So they called me, yeah, and they're like, "You were on so and so's land." I'm like, well. I'll be out in 5 minutes. I'll come talk to you.
Wisconsin, you would have got shot, homie.
And so I came out and found out, nope, this land had gotten sold and didn't know, and ultimately I was able
And
to
who's
get
that on, Dusty? Who's that on?
Onyx for not
I
updating.
knew you were going to say Onyx, as if you would have remembered.
Thankfully,
the name.
the new landowners, I got a hold of them through Facebook, which another story to come there, and said, "Hey, I'm this guy that was on your land. I didn't realize. Here's the backstory." And they're super gracious and "Hey, no big deal. We just didn't know.
But come here again. We'll shoot you in the face. So on and so forth.
Actually, they were super great. They were like, "Hey, we're going to be out there working. Stop by sometime. We'd love to meet you." But one of the interesting things is
If Dusty goes missing, we know where to start.
But one of the interesting things this year is that they've put in a road, they've put in a stand adjacent to this county line, but there's just this deep-seated desire in me to no, I want to shoot something off that land, this 2-acre
Dude,
parcel.
I've walked that with you, and I think it's possible.
Oh, I thought it's totally possible. I think I could.
It's all about like what you're after.
Yeah, I think there's ultimately like long term, it's just going to result in like me shooting a doe. If as long as I don't miss, as you found out.
Well, the deer moved, dude. It wasn't you, of course. Come on.
Exactly.
So, are we ready to move into 2024 expectations?
Yes.
Or do you have any other scouting stuff you want to touch on?
No, I mean, other than like, I've just been really encouraged this last year or recently to reach out to local different pieces of the landowners and just get permission.
Yeah.
To
Are you
hunt on
primarily
lands.
doing that through like Facebook and stuff?
Yep, Facebook. Like there's this parcel of land, like 375 acres of land that
In my prime, we'll say 3 years ago, I was reaching out to like there's places that the cemetery owned. I was emailing. I was like just throwing a wide net and be like, because it was areas that were adjacent to public property, and I was like, oh man, it'd be cool to have permission just to kind of have free range and all this stuff and really utilize the whole landscape and not just a smaller portion of it.
Well, I think last year I remember listening to a podcast by the Push Archery and Matt Zernzak, who really talked about and shared his experience of going around and getting permission from local landowners and that. And then just kind of came to fruition this year in this last like week of like, you know what? Like I don't have a lot of time, given everything going on. So why not maximize understanding the area as close to home as possible for this next year, 2, 3, or however many, and just expand out from there.
Yeah.
And so I just really encouraged this last week, reach out to a couple different people, just trying to gain access to these different spots and just like making it my goal. Like, I think my biggest goal this year is just like, hey, let's try to get into as many local spots as I can and just expand out this area. Because ultimately, I don't have a ton of time. I don't have time to drive an hour.
Yeah.
If I can drive
100%.
a minute and spend.
And here's my holdup. Yeah. And here's my, I don't mean to cut you off. But if I did, I'm fine with that as well.
I'll try to get over it.
Yeah. That's right. Weep silently over here while I talk. So my holdup, obviously, so everything I'm hunting is public land.
Yep.
So my thing.
And like this ultimately led to the success of one of my biggest buck was just the fact that there's a lot of people hunting the same land, right? And so the hunt prior to the one where I ended up with my
biggest buck, which you can see here, Dusty.
As you can see, yes.
I mean, if you want to attempt to put this into words, please feel free. But
I mean, given off what I've seen, that could be 190. I wouldn't know a difference.
We will not be posting a picture. We'll let the imagination
or is that a
run
90?
wild.
I don't know.
Oh, gosh, okay. It's not a 90, okay?
What would you classify that
I
as?
tried to classify that as triple digits. I don't measure.
Like 120, 130?
Measuring just in all aspects of life.
It's just
nothing good comes from it.
Okay, off the
Moving
rails.
on. All right. So
We're back, folks.
So everything around me that's quick and easy to access is
What are we
public
talking
land.
about?
Public land.
Okay.
All right, dude. Reel it in.
And my bigger thing for me right now is that we have people that are just there, right? And so Mikey and I, we're going out scouting. So we're going out scouting, and I won't get into expectations yet. But the thing that I'm running into is like, okay, there's people either like there's stands already out here.
Yep.
We went out opening morning, and there's some areas I wanted to go into, and literally for me, I was like, it's the first day. Like, I don't want to screw anybody up because we were kind of heading. We were just heading out. We checked out this one area, then we got in the car and we drove a little bit. And I was like, man, I just don't want to screw anybody up if they're out there on their first day. People are excited. I just don't want to go push around, like burn a bunch of land for other people, even though that's what I need to do.
Yep.
And just get eyes on type of thing and try to get up to date. And so that's more my issue is not that there's a lack of land. It's that there's a lack of unpressured land. And so what's really cool as Mikey and I are talking about, like, okay, hey, now we're aware that someone's here or there's a camera here. So obviously there's foot traffic.
How can we play off of that?
And that's something that I think I've shifted in my mind or my mindset, my focus on is like, oh yeah, there's all this pressure. Whereas like a year or two ago, I would have been like, oh, that area is out versus like, oh, okay, how can I use that? Do you feel like that's the kind of the same for you?
So well, and to finish the story with the
bigger buck before we got derailed there.
The 190.
So it was the day before I
harvested, as you like to say. I killed, murdered, slaughtered the buck I have.
Harvested. You can go back and listen to
harvest,
episodes.
You harvest
such and such.
You harvest beans and you kill deer. That's a shout out to the Cricks. Anyway, so I was out in a stand
that I had set up in the dark because I had found a fresh scrape, and I was like, I'm just gonna hunt like where the deer are, right?
Yep.
And so then someone tromped out there, breaking every branch they could, like clearly being loud on purpose. And I looked at them, they looked at me, they stood there, and instead of getting like annoyed or upset or whatever, I was just like, okay.
And I set up in the dark.
Yep.
And I didn't see they had like a stand in a tree, like probably 60 yards to my left, right?
And so I'm like, okay, whatever. So I just climbed down, packed up, and I'm like, all right, I've got like, because I'm constantly moving, I have these, like a kind of a prioritization. I'm like, okay, we got to hit here, we can hit here next, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so because of that pressure, I moved, and it ended up, the next hunt I ended up with my buck. And so as Mikey and I are scouting, and I'm like, hey, these guys are here. We're on the opposite side. We have a different way of accessing it. If we're in the earlier, quieter, on the correct wind, like they can actually end up pushing deer to us. Yeah, exactly. Or they leave early, right? And then we stay later. Like there's all these different variables. And he's like, whoa, like there's a lot of different aspects to this.
Yeah.
And just kind of like introducing it as this isn't like a thing we get pissed about. It's a thing that we adapt to.
Yep.
And
use.
Try to use.
It's intel.
Yeah, you try to use it to your advantage.
Yeah.
Right? Because I was out there with him on opening morning, and I was like, we run again. We're like
literally right in the middle of where I was like, hey, we're checking out this area. He's like, oh, whoa, this is right where you wanted to check out. I was like, yeah, but now we know, like we've gained information, even though we might not hunt here. But we've gained information that we can play off. Like, how can we use this to our benefit?
Yeah.
Right? And in some cases, it means I'm just not going to use that area because, like, that was the spot to be at, and it's
now
already
it's
in
burned.
use. And I don't want to. I'm not going to do the fight over. Like, there's plenty of deer. You just got to keep moving.
Yep.
So anyway, so that's my thing versus you like needing more land. Like it'd be great to have more access close to home. My access is super close to home,
but it's also close to thousands of other
people.
homes,
Yep.
right? But maybe like quickly moving into not quickly.
Because
we're long
to kind of provide context real quick, you're hunting in suburban area Superior.
Sub-metro, yep.
Yep, sub-metro,
Yep.
whereas I'm in the country.
Yeah.
Where there is a lot of hardwoods, but I'm surrounded by a
ton of
lot of
private.
private
Ton of
and
private, yeah.
very sparse county land.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, so maybe moving into I mean, gosh, we can do this. I mean, we're at 108 for time.
Holy cow!
Yeah,
people
dude.
probably
So-
stopped listening.
Yeah, exactly.
An hour ago.
So we can either wrap this up and then just do expectations on the next one, and I can just cut what we're talking about right now, or we can just jump into expectations.
let's just go into expectations.
Sweet.
I think we'll wrap
Hey,
that up.
We've always been long-winded. Let's keep it going. You guys should know us by now.
yeah,
I mean,
come on.
you know.
And if you don't, you'll have to reacquaint yourselves
Well,
with our.
welcome to the VCP, where
Yeah,
we're
it's-
long-winded.
It's been 3 years. Go ahead and.
We have a lot to get off our chest.
Yeah, guys, there's a lot to catch up on.
Don't worry, your 5-minute episodes are after this. Okay, so expectations.
Yes.
Do you have a good grip on yours for this year?
Yes.
Okay. I also feel like I have a good grip on mine, even though I'm wrestling with them.
All right. Do you want me to go first?
Sure. Yeah,
All
I've
right,
been going
so
first on everything else.
My expectations this year is I just want to get out in the woods, to the point where I
Wait,
say
that's
this.
literally it?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I don't think you'll be disappointed. That is about
Honestly, like I think like
Were you
mentally
planning on bringing your bow or just getting out in the woods?
bringing my bow,
Okay.
and then hoping to fling an arrow at something, to the point where Go ahead.
Nope, I'm good.
All right. I was going to say, like, I have a trail cam out in an
Yeah.
area, but to the point where, like, through some podcasts I've listened to this week where I'm just, like, really, in one hand, challenged, and the other hand, just, like, really okay with, you know what? I don't even care about trail cams. I don't care about getting inventory. Like, I just want to get out into the woods because, like I said, based off of last year's experience, I really enjoyed that. But then coupling that with the idea of like becoming a better woodsman of understanding what's going on, what's happening out there, and just really relying on, am I finding good current deer sign and getting set up over that and being okay with what I see or don't see. And really allowing myself to be challenged now, whether this year, next year, for the next few years, regardless of what I see or don't see, and utilizing that information on making me ultimately a better hunter. Because one of the big things that I've realized is like, hey, the last podcast we did was 3 years ago, and it's felt like it's been a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
What can I do and learn in the next 3 years and be okay with, like, you know, what if I don't shoot a deer for 3 more years? I mean, hopefully I do, because my wife would like that.
Yeah,
and
and
some
I-
meat in the freezer.
I'm gonna think you're a total failure if you don't. But continue.
Thank you. I probably am. but
Well,
like,
that's why you'll come
like,
on. That's why you'll come on deer drives with us. So
Exactly.
you at least have that fallback plan.
I didn't even
That's
get any.
safety-
I didn't
that's
get
safety net.
anything from that last deer drive, so I don't know if that's even.
Well, dude, you weren't committed. Okay, you got to shoot better.
Apparently, but like just realizing, like, hey, long term, what I'm doing now is I feel like I'm still learning and growing and being okay with like the limited time that I have. To down the road, that's when I can really invest
Do you feel
my
like-
time.
But do you feel like are any of my thoughts resonating with you on in terms of like feeling like, oh, I'm like almost restarting in a sense,
Yes.
where it's
Yep.
like I have the remnants of things that are really important
Yeah.
that I'm trying to remember and figure out. But as far as like actually being out in this given area, none of it's up to date, and so I'm kind of at ground zero in a sense.
Yep. Yeah, I do feel that.
Okay.
I really do feel that. And in some sense, I'm feeling that renewed sense of like, I'm learning all this over again. But just like having based off that previous experience of being able to dial back the expectation. Like this year, like I'm actually, I think the first time in my life, totally okay with, especially in the area I'm hunting.
You know this is recorded, right?
Yep.
So we'll find out if
like,
you're totally okay
like
later.
the area I'm hunting in, it's hunters, not even hunter's choice. It's just like you get one, like either a doe or a buck, and that's it.
Wait, that's what your tag is?
Yeah, the area
didn't
that
know
I'm
that.
taking, I can get tags for other areas if I go to like other counties and whatnot. So I do have other opportunities, but like I really am okay with like if I have a doe. Like that's one of the things that sucked last year is I did actually have a shot at a doe, but I couldn't take it because last year was buck only in the zone I was in. Like that was super frustrating because I had the buck that I could have taken that started coming in and then literally like peeled off left.
So you couldn't have taken.
I couldn't have taken like the only buck I saw last year that I saw
Yeah.
literally like peeled off to walk around in an area, whereas all the other does literally walked in front of me. I'm like,
Smarter, just smarter.
you.
I'm sure that.
But whereas this year, like it's doe or buck, and I'm totally okay. Like I don't care as far, like does it have antlers or not, and like I just ultimately I want to get better at like getting where the deer are at, seeing deer, and due to my wife's expectations, she would like me to shoot something.
Yeah,
And I would also like some back straps. Like,
Yeah.
It's been a couple years, so I would just like to shoot something. So that's my expectations is getting what I can this year, but with understanding long term, I'm gaining that experience and implementing all those kind of concepts and ideas moving forward. So that's where I'm at.
Bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how that plays out.
We'll see.
No, I do like that. I think so. As far as expectations,
kind of 2 sets because I'm working with Mikey on his first archery season.
So there's his expectations to consider,
Okay.
which is pretty much if it's brown, it's down. You know, no spots.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Kind of where he's at. And I've shared this with him. I'm like, you realize like I'm not like necessarily searching for.
Could I would definitely say that this is something I was thinking about today was I remember back to my first ever year of hunting. And the first hunt I ever had, going with my friends, I had a doe, probably one of the biggest does I've ever seen to date, which in hindsight, I didn't realize. I had her at like 15, 20 yards, broadside, standing there, not aware I was there at all. And I wish I had taken that shot, but because at the time, like I didn't realize the influence of stupid like hunting social media that like, oh, it's just a doe, wait for the buck. Like, I wish that somebody had told me, like, dude, this is your first year hunting.
yeah.
Like, if you have a decent size, even doe in front of you, take it.
Yeah,
because what it's going to.
Literally what we've talked about with together is that if it doesn't have spots,
Yeah.
you should shoot it.
Yeah, exactly. Because, like, what you're
just the
going to gain from.
experience-
Exactly.
It's just, I'm like, just start building on the experience.
Because that's one of my biggest regrets is, like, I had that deer. Like, I could have taken it easily. And I think
Well, you were using a compound at that
I
time.
was.
Okay, yeah.
And
I
15,
will say
20
you
yards.
could have taken it
I-
easily.
yeah,
You could have,
I- like-
I'll give you that. You're a great shot with that.
And I really wish I had taken that because, like, what I would have gained from that experientially, confidence-wise, would, I think, ultimately made a big difference long
you
term.
were all
But
bent out of shape, man. That sucks.
because of that, like, subconscious, like, pressure of
Buck.
social media, like, you got to get a big buck.
Yeah, otherwise
Big,
it doesn't.
huge
Otherwise, it
regret.
doesn't count.
Yeah.
It's actually like a negative.
Yeah.
hash, you know,
Where
like a
one thing the
negative-
trad community has done right is really push, like, dude, does are down. Like, it's a doe. Like,
Yeah.
cool. Get excited. Get pumped.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, it's something. You did something right.
Yeah. So
And
okay,
kinda-
so what?
Sorry. I'm going to say, kind of finding out, too, like, dude, if you can get a doe just literally standing there totally unaware that you're there,
Yeah.
like, it's actually harder
That in
than,
itself is a win.
harder than a buck just standing there. Unless it's like a super, super aged, mature buck that's like totally in tune.
I don't know if I don't know if we want to dig into that.
But that's a whole nother
I'm curious.
discussion.
Yeah, we'll hold
We'll-
off on that
we'll-
kind of discussion.
We'll shelf it.
Expectations. So,
What's yours?
So with Mikey, yeah, we've kind of set the expectation like, hey, this is.
No, what's yours? I don't
right.
care about
I'm
Mikey.
recapping Dusty because we went on a tangent again. Like if it's brown, it's down. But he's also aware that like the way I'm scouting is not just like, hey, we want to find some does.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm looking for something that I'd be excited to shoot.
Yep.
Because I'm based off of prior years in rifle season with all the deer drives we're doing. I'm very confident we'll have meat.
You'll have me.
And so going into archery, like we both have 2 sub-metro doe tags.
Yep.
So I'd be happy to shoot a doe too. Like I wouldn't necessarily pass up a doe. I definitely would pass up a really small buck. Like I feel confident about like that side of it.
Okay.
and plus, it's just I found like it's also really cool just to be within close proximity to deer that you're not planning on shooting, and just like having essentially not an interaction, but more or less an interaction where
Yeah.
it's like, hey, what are they noticing? What are they not noticing?
So even like that's one of the things too. I think I've really come to appreciate. Like even if it's kind of like frustrating when you like don't see anything. But even if you see something and they're super close and you just don't like. Even last year when I didn't have an opportunity at that one buck.
Yeah.
But I had a bunch of does and
Yeah.
yearlings surrounding me and they never noticed me.
Yeah.
Like that was cool.
That was-
Like
yeah.
okay, like it affirmed. Like okay, what I did was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you just don't know if there's nothing around. You're like, well, what did I do?
And you also
Right
like
or wrong.
some of it too is like it's amazing how you're like, how is it that they're this oblivious? And like there's some of that where I've literally had 2 spikes essentially I was only like 8 to 10 feet off the ground and they
as
walked
high as I get.
around my tree.
It's as high as I
They,
get.
I mean, like they just walked around my tree. They were browsing for like 30 minutes, and I was just like, this is
unaware.
This is crazy. Yeah.
Just unaware that
like
you're
the
there.
wind, they're definitely catching my wind,
Yep.
or they should be, like, because they've done a 360 around me multiple times.
Yep. Or maybe
Anyway.
hey, maybe the wind was carrying you over.
Yeah, could be.
Karen.
It wasn't that windy, but could have been. So anyway, expectations for me this year, and what I've told Mikey, I'm like, this year is an information gathering year. I think that we will set up a ground blind.
Let's say what information.
I think we will set up a ground blind and bait to get our kids out and to like try to see deer with them there,
Okay.
to like have some experience that isn't 100% suck.
Yep.
And again, like that would be a great way for Mikey to get his first deer. Like,
Yeah.
who cares? But as far as like this year, it is information gathering. So finding out what areas are hit super heavy by people, which has been a byproduct of our scouting, right? Like we just are going to spots that I'm like, hey, this seems like it'd be a good spot to check out. And I think every spot but one so far has had like almost exactly where we're looking to scout has had like either a camera, tree stand, usually both. So that tells us something for the surrounding areas, right?
And then also trying to get trail cameras out in areas, like right now, it's like we just want to get high traffic areas where we're just seeing high quantities of deer,
Yeah.
so that we know what at least is in the area.
Okay.
Right. And I'm thinking more bucks on this front, right? Like I just want to see what's coming through.
And just get an idea of like, is there something I'd be excited to really spend some time breaking down this area and figuring it out type of thing?
So trying to really casting a wide net, and like, I don't know how soon I'll be up in an actual tree, like in my climber. I don't really know when that's going to happen because there's nothing so far. And obviously it's been a really short period of time, and it's really,
day.
I've been really, it's funny. Like I am having full transparency, having a super hard time.
Like clearly I can see where deer are. I'm looking at track size. I'm like trying to take into account like all the different terrain and where deer would like bucks would like to bed, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's so thick. It's so nasty. Can't see more than, and obviously there's some areas you can, but for the most part, you can't see more than like 10 yards in any direction. There's food everywhere. There's water everywhere. I really need to focus on these micro transition areas and start to try to do that. But anyway, as far as expectation goes, it's like this year we are gathering information. If we find something, especially once we get into rut where you got your scrapes that are being laid down heavy. I think we found a community scrape the other day that was like, oh, cool. Like this is a big deal.
And so really just trying to get kind of putting all the information that I had 3 years ago and more or less verifying whether or not it's worth being in that area anymore, or if I need to just kind of move on and put that in the way back of the memory type of thing.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're kind of based on a lot of what you gathered from 3 years ago?
I think I'm looking at areas that I did know about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Because at the very least, I can be like, hey, this has changed.
Yeah.
Based off of what it was. So, for example, there was this community scrape that was like the size of a car hood that I could look at year round, year over year, and it consistently had deer go there because I had a trail camera offset from it.
Does, bucks, like we're hitting it year round all the time.
Yeah.
Went out there, put a trail camera there. Like everything's kind of grown up where that scrape used to be.
And nothing.
Well, I mean, I haven't had the camera out long enough to really.
But if there's absolutely
completely
no scrape
write it
there.
off. Yeah, there's not. Like you can see the ground is slightly more barren, but it's not like a fresh scrape that's been used.
Yeah.
So time over time now.
And so like I'm using that to be able to compare and contrast, but in the mix of that, I'm also dropping new pins of like, hey, we need to go check out this area because I haven't really spent time in that area. And it's all walking distance for the most part.
So it's really like I told him, I'm like, we're just going to burn a ton of ground until there's something that tells us that's worth stopping and investing some real time into.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of our expectation for this year is, hey, it'd be great for him to get a doe.
Yeah.
We're probably going to be moving a ton. And I move a lot, I would say, during regular season anyway, even when I have a good grip on things. Like I don't like to sit in the same spot
For 10, 15 days. It's like probably 3 or 4, maybe 5 sits max. If I don't see anything, then I'm probably moving.
Yeah.
And looking for fresher sign that would indicate that it'd be worthwhile.
I'm gonna say, do you feel like a big switch for you has been like shifting from maybe like, hey, theoretically, this is what I know I should be looking for, to like, hey, let's look for active sign.
So I would say not having last fall to be where you're like, this is super up to date,
Yeah.
right? I can clearly see trails. I have a ton of trail camera photos. I have boots on the ground. I have time in the stand where I've kind of like actually, right, like the compiling of information that then informs your next year. Like I've moved from that to kind of square one where it's
What's here in
Yep.
front of me?
Yep, what's here in front of me. And if it's not there, we just accept that and we don't get married to the idea of what it was,
Yep.
where we know that at one point in time this worked
and now it doesn't.
And so just being able to kind of let go of what once was and let it be a fun memory that I got a big buck here,
Yeah.
but not
Sounds like a metaphor for life.
Right. And so,
but it's been really challenging, the actual implementation of it.
Yeah.
Because now I'm back to where it's like, oh, I'm running into some people's stuff everywhere I go, and like all these areas. It's like, oh, we all have the same idea. So,
yeah, I would say that expectation this year is really, I'm in the pursuit of something great. But my expectation is that I'm really just going to start to build kind of a fresh outlook on the properties that I've been to, and trying to figure out a little bit new areas and look at things through a new lens and try to get it back up to date again.
Yeah.
Because it's just not reliable 3
Yep.
years ago, right? Yeah, so I'd say that's my expectation for this year. I'd love to get Mikey anything. He'll be with us in rifle season, I'm sure. But it'd be great to have him shoot a deer with a bow and that kind of thing. So,
Well, sweet.
yeah,
I think we should probably wrap up. People
All right.
are probably
sounds
dozed
good.
off.
100%. Hopefully they fall asleep to our sweet, sweet velvety voices.
We're back to our hour plus of just ramblings.
Oh, it's so good. All right, cool. Hey, well, thanks everybody for listening. And gosh, subscribe? Is that a thing people still do? Right? I mean, it's been 3 years.
Follow.
Hey,
I don't even
we're-
know what the kids do
Hey,
these days.
we're navigating just like we're trying to navigate
Yeah, we got to figure out what the
outdoors.
current lingo is.
Yeah. Dude, if you're vibing with us,
Josh and dab us up. I
oh
don't
my
know.
gosh. It's so good. It's so good.
Oh, well, this was good.
Yeah, dude. All right. Well, hope you guys enjoyed.
All right. Peace
Peace out.
out.